Hi everybody, this is Courtney with Fiber Fox Studios and welcome to another Mosaic Monday. Today I'm going to be using these two colors, and this color right here, this is Stylecraft Special Double Knit, or DK as I like to call it, and this color is pomegranate. This is one of my favorites. It has such a pretty sheen on it, so we're going to use that today. This is going to be my color A. And then for my color B, I'm going to be using this paint box, which has been well loved, as you can tell. I have used it quite a bit, and we're going to use that today. And the paint box color, this is the Paint Box Yarns Simply DK, and we're going to be using color 132. That's the color number for this one. It doesn't have a color name. So we're going to get started by chaining in multiples of 10 plus 4 at the end to start our project. But I do want to point out, when you're doing this, typically when we chain, we're chaining for the total width of the project that we're making. But for a variation and to make a change in the actual look of the mosaics that you're doing, you can also chain the total length of the project and then work your pieces on for the total width that you want, and that will give you a completely different look on the project because you're going to be turning the patterns basically on their side. So that's just a little tip I want to give you guys, just in case you are wanting, instead of this diamond shape being tall, you're wanting it more of a wide diamond. You will be able to change it up by just chaining your total length of your project instead of the width. I'm going to be doing a swatch, so I'm going to chain the total width of my swatch, and then I'll show you guys how you're going to work this entire design. We're going to be doing rows 1 through 21 in this particular tutorial, and then you will be able to rewind back to row 2 to continue on to do a wider swatch. So you can continue the same pattern for multiple rows just by going back to row 2 after you've completed all 21 rows. You'll be able to rewind back to row 2 and work row 2 to row 21 all over again to continue up with the design. So just saying that, normally I say that at the end, but I wanted to go ahead and tell you guys that right out in the beginning. So we're going to start by doing our chain, and I'm going to be starting in the color A for the starting chain. So you're going to be working your starting chain in the color A that you have chosen. You're going to do your starting chain and row 1 all in the same color. So pick whatever color you would like to use as color A, and let's get started. So we're going to be starting by doing a slip knot, and I do want to mention that if you are new to my channel, please make sure that you have given this video a thumbs up. Please make sure you're subscribed, and the pattern, the actual chart for this mosaic, is available in my Etsy store, and there is a variation to this design that is available only for those who purchase the chart. It's a longer repeat on everything, so it's a lot more than what I can teach in a video here on YouTube, but it's available as part of your purchase of this chart. So we're going to start chaining in our multiples of 10. So I have my slip knot on my hook in color A, and I'm just going to grab my yarn and pull up a loop. Grab my yarn and pull up a loop, and I'm going to keep doing this in sets of 10, and then I will add 4 on to the end. So for me, I'm going to do a total of 24 chains total. You can chain whatever number you need for the project that you're going to do, but if you're following along right here with me and going to do a swatch, you're going to do color A, total of 24 chains, and then meet back up with me in just a moment for us to start row 1. And so that means you can pause here, and we'll be back in just a second. If you're meeting back up with me, that means you've got your chain ready, and we're going to begin on row 1. So this is row number 1, and this is how all of your mosaic rows are going to start. You are always going to be doing a single crochet in the very first and last stitch of the row, but we're going to do this, we're going to start row 1 together because we've got a total of 24 chains, but this chain right here is actually a turning chain. So we never count the loop that is on our hook, and we're going to skip the very next chain. So we're going to skip one, and we're going to work into the second doing a traditional single crochet. So traditional single crochet means we're going to go under both loops here in the very first stitch. And obviously this is a little fiddly doing this on camera, so bear with me. So we're going to make sure that we get under both loops, and we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop, and we're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2 for our traditional single crochet. So now the rest of this row is going to be done in a very easy multiple. We're going to be doing back loop only single crochets all the way down the row. So what I mean by that is we're going to be picking up only one loop this time, one right here on this side of that V. So we're going to pick up the back loop only, just the back loop, and we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, and that is going to complete our first back loop only single crochet. So now we've got to continue on down doing the same exact thing, back loop only. It's a little hard to show you guys here on the very first row, but hopefully you're getting it. So back loop only single crochet in each and every stitch, and then meet up with me at the end of the row again so I can show you how we end this row, just to make sure you guys are doing that traditional single crochet. So pause here and we'll be back in just a moment. Alright, so we are here at the end of our row. I have one last stitch left to work into. So we've done our back loop only single crochets all the way down the row. That's what our work is looking like. And now we're just going to go under that V, or we're going to insert into the center of the V, going under both loops. So this is where it gets really important. We want to make sure that we are going under that V each and every time to do our traditional single crochet in the very last stitch of the row. And we are done with row 1 now. So that's all we have to do. So we're just going to chain up 2. That's how I like to bind off. You can bind off whatever way that you personally prefer to, but I do the chain 2. And now I'm going to clip my yarn and go ahead and pull that loop on up through. And then I'm going to grab just above those 2 chains I made, and I've got the tail over here. I'm going to cinch down. So I'm going to pull as I slide down with my thumb, and that is going to make that little knot right there. And that's what I like at the end of my row. So now we're going to get started on row 2. To begin row 2, we're going to be switching colors, but we're going to talk about where we're starting these rows at really briefly. And I've gone over this in several other videos, so if you need more help, just check out the other tutorials. Right here, this little piece that I just moved with my finger, that is our turning chain, and it will bump out and almost look like a stitch to work into, but it's not. So what I like to make sure is that I take my nail and push that down. Your first stitch in the row is not going to move, but that turning chain that's here on the side of your work will move. So make sure that you move it out of the way so that you do not accidentally work into that. What we're looking for is this V right here. We're going to be working into this very first V. And if you take a look on down the rest of your row, you can see your V's pretty easily. So we want to make sure that we're always finding the very first stitch in the row. This is where you can start utilizing stitch markers if you are struggling with it. You can make your very first stitch in each row, which is always going to be your traditional single crochet. After you complete that traditional single crochet, you can insert a stitch marker in there, and that will help you mark your first stitch. You can do the same thing at the end of the row if you're worried about missing that stitch. So we're just going to insert our hook underneath the V. We want to make sure that we're getting under both of those stitches, just like that. And we are now going to grab color B. So we're going to join on with color B, and we have another really simple repeat for this row. We're going to be doing our back loop only single crochets. So to join on your next color, I like to just do a slip knot again, and then I slip that on my hook that's already in the first stitch, tighten that down, and then I just bring up that loop nice and easy. We're going to let our tail fall. I don't like working over my tails because it'll kind of make the work a little fat, and it makes it hard to see what you're doing. So we're going to chain 1 right there, and then we're going to go right back into that same exact stitch, and we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop, and we're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2 to complete that first traditional single crochet in the very first stitch of the row. So now we're going to be looking for the very next stitch, and we are going to identify that, and we're going to work in the back loop only again. So back loop only, single crochet into the very next stitch. Try not to keep really tight tension. You don't want to draw your stitches. And then we're going to go into the very next stitch again, right there into the back loop only. So just picking up one side and finish out our back loop only single crochet. And we are going to keep working in that exact same manner all the way down the rest of this row. So we're going to meet back up when we are ready to do the last stitch in the row, but you're going to keep working your back loop only single crochets all the way down the rest of your row, and we'll be back in just a moment. So you can go ahead and pause here. We're back for the end of row 2, and I have one last stitch left here on this row. So we're going to insert under that V, so making sure that we're getting under both stitches. Hopefully that's nice and clear for you guys to see. So we're doing our traditional single crochet right here in the very last stitch of the row. This helps us keep nice straight even sides, so it's really important that you always know the very last stitch is going to be that traditional single crochet. So we're going to chain up 2 if you're following along exactly with me, and now we're just going to simply bind off again. So I've got that tail, placing my fingers right above those 2 chains I just made, and I'm going to push down as I pull up on that tail. Ta-da! So now we're going to be moving on to row number 3, and this is where we're actually going to get some mosaic work in. So we're going to be switching back over to color A. So for me, that's going to be the pomegranate, this pink color. It's looking like it matches my nails perfectly. So we're going to be switching over to color A. So you're going back to this color, whatever that was for you. So now we're going to go over here to the beginning of our row, and we are going to make sure that we kind of pull on this a little bit. We want to make sure we're getting this first stitch in the row nice and up and out of the way. We want to make sure our turning chain is down on the side and out of the way, because we just want to make sure that we're not going into the wrong stitch. So again, we're going to go into the very first stitch in the row, and this is where you can get your count off, so make sure you're getting into that first stitch. Now we're just going to grab our beautiful color A, whatever that is for you, and we're going to join it on again with a little slip knot. So I'm just going to create a quick little slip knot, and then I'm going to put that on my hook, and I'm going to draw up that loop really quick. Now we're going to let our tail fall. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to go back down in that same exact stitch. Just going right back in that first stitch. We're going to go in there, and we are going to complete our traditional single crochet. So now we're going to begin on row number 3. We're going to do 5 drop down double crochets, 1 back loop only single crochet, and then 4 drop down double crochets for the repeat. So this is our repeat for row 3 begins now. We're going to do the 5 drop down double crochets. So to do that drop down double crochet, we're just going to wrap our yarn around our hook. We're going to identify our very next stitch, and then we are going to slide straight down. So let me grab a hold of this a little bit better. Next stitch, we identify it, slide straight down, and we're looking for this little bump. And as you will see, there's directly down below, there is the front loop that was left by us doing the back loop onlys. We're going to be grabbing that up. We're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. And we want to make sure we're keeping nice loose tension. We don't want to pull this loop up. We don't want that look when we're done. We want it to kind of fold down. So you can put your thumb over it to hold that in place. And now we're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2. Grab our yarn and pull through 2 to complete our first drop down double crochet. But we've got to do a total of 5 of these babies. So we're going to do the very next stitch is also going to be a drop down double crochet. Here's another place that you can get your count off, so make sure that you identify what is your very next stitch. You can do so by folding this double crochet back, and you will see that hidden back here behind it is 1 stitch. So that, when we cover it back up with our drop down double crochet, that is 1 stitch. Our next stitch is right here, so we know we can do our second drop down double crochet right here. So we identify our next stitch, we slide down 2 rows below, and there's that little bump. So we just want to turn our hook and pick that up. So we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, grab our yarn and pull through 2. That's our second drop down double crochet. So now we're going to wrap our yarn again. We got to do 5 of these, remember. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook again, identify our next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, and we're just looking for that little bump. It's right there. Going to pick that up, and we are going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. Nice loose tension. Grab our yarn and pull through 2. Grab our yarn and pull through 2. So that's our third drop down double crochet. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook again. We're going to identify our very next stitch. We're going to slide directly down 2 rows below, and we're going to pick up this little bump. So just turn my hook and slide right up underneath that. Now we're going to grab and pull up a loop. Nice loose tension. Grab and pull through 2. Grab and pull through 2. So that's our fourth drop down double crochet. So now we're going to wrap one more time. We're going to find our next stitch. We're going to go down, find that little bump, and pick that up. We're going to wrap, or we're going to grab and pull up a loop. We're going to grab and pull through 2, and we're going to grab and pull through 2. So that's our 5 drop down double crochets. So now we need to do 1 back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. So just like so, back loop only. Now we need to do 4 drop down double crochets to end our repeat. So in the very next stitch, we're going to slide down, find that little bump. So I've already got my yarn wrapped. We're going to pick up that bump. We're going to grab and pull up a loop. We're going to grab and pull through 2. We're going to grab and pull through 2. So that's our first drop down double crochet of this set of 4. So we're going to find our very next stitch. I've already wrapped my yarn around my hook, and we're going to find the next stitch. We're going to slide down 2 rows below, and we're going to find that little bump. Pick that up, and we're going to finish our second drop down double crochet. So pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. So now we're going to wrap our yarn again, identify our very next stitch, slide down 2 rows below. We're looking for that little bump right there, and we're going to grab that up. Now we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2. So that's 3 drop down double crochets. We need 1 more to end our repeat. Right here, very next stitch, slide down and grab that little bump. It's 2 rows below. We're connecting basically with the color that's on our hook. We're connecting with it down 2 rows below to create our shape. So that ends our repeat. So our repeat began over here with 5 back loop or 5 drop down double crochets. Those are double crochets. So we did 5 drop down double crochets, 1 back loop only single crochet, 4 drop down double crochets. So you are going to start your repeat over as you go on down your row, and you're going to begin again with 5 drop down double crochets. So I'm just going to start you on your repeat, and then you'll be able to pause. So you're just going to begin the very next stitch. You're starting over. You got to do 5 of those drop down double crochets. So there's my very first one. So there's 1. Find my next stitch, slide down 2 rows below and pick up that bump. So there's 2. Right here again. Here's number 3 on my drop down double crochets. find the very next. Here is number 4. And last but not least, I'll try not to bump that camera again. And here's number 5. So that's 5 drop down double crochets. The very next stitch I do back loop only single crochet. And then I end the repeat with 4 drop down double crochets. So the very next stitch I start doing my double crochets again. So there's 1, wrap my yarn. Here's number 2. Wrap my yarn. Here's number 3. And wrap my yarn. Here's number 4. And that ends the repeat for the row. So if I've got more to do, I'm going to start back over doing the 5 drop down double crochets. Then I'm going to do 1 back loop, single crochet, 4 drop down double crochets. So you keep working that exact same manner, and you're going to start seeing sections in your work just like this. So you're going to have the 9, you've got 5 and then 4 from the end of the repeat. So you have 9 double crochets right here, all dropping down once you keep doing your repeat over and over and over. So as you work, that'll start making a little bit more sense. Hopefully it's making sense, but keep working same manner all the way down the rest of your row. Pause here, meet back up with me when you are ready to do your end of your row of number 3 that we're on. Row 3 end. Sorry. And here we are ready to do the end of row 3. And as you can see, I've just finished up 1 repeat of the pattern. There's 4 drop down double crochets here at the end of the repeat. So I've got 2 stitches left, 1 and 2. So I'm going to start my repeat again by wrapping my yarn around my hook, and I'm going to do 1 drop down double crochet right here into the very next stitch. And then I know that my very last stitch in the row always has to be a traditional single crochet. So that is exactly what I'm going to do right there in that very last stitch. And then I'm going to chain up 2 and bind off. You will do the same exactly as I am doing, or you can do what you prefer to do to bind off, but we are going to bind off, clip that yarn, and move on up to row number 4. We're moving right along to row number 4, and this is what your work is looking like after you've completed row 3. Obviously, most of you are going to have a lot longer project. It's going to be a lot larger project. There are project ideas down below in the description. My descriptions always have a lot of extra information, so please make sure you're checking down there. We're going to start off on row 4 by joining into the very first stitch in the row. So again, we have our little turning chain from our previous row that we are going to have to deal with. We want to make sure that we kind of scoot it down out of the way. We want to make sure we're never working into that side turning chain, because it is the side of our work and that will throw our counts off. So we're going to make sure that we're going right here, finding that very first V, and that's where we're going to insert our hook. Going forward, I'm not going to keep showing this in detail over and over, so you will be able to refer down to the description for the start times of each and every row if you need more help on how to join on. But every join is exactly the same. So we're going to be joining on color B this time for row number 4. And we're just simply going to add that slip knot to our hook, draw up that loop. Now we're going to let our tail go ahead and fall, get it out of the way, and we're going to grab our yarn and chain 1, and we're going to go back down into this exact same first stitch. So we're going back in that first stitch like that, making sure we're under the V, under both of those little loops, and we're going to grab and pull up a loop, and we are going to grab and pull through 2 to finish out our traditional single crochet. So now our repeat for row number 4 is pretty easy. We're going to be doing 5 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet, 4 back loop only single crochets. So we're going to get started on that. We're going to do it together. We're going to start our repeat with the 5 back loop only single crochets, working into these next 5 stitches. So we're going to identify our very next stitch. we're going to insert our hook and pick up the back loop only. So we're just picking up that back loop, and we're going to do a back loop only single crochet. So there's one. Now we're going to find the next stitch and do a second back loop only single crochet. So there's number 2. Now we're going to find the third stitch, back loop only single crochet. So there's number 3. Here is number 4. And number 5 is right here. So here's our 5th one. So we've done 5 back loop only single crochets. So now we need to do 1 drop down double crochet. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, identify our very next stitch. We're going to slide down 2 rows below, and there's our little bump right there. We're going to pick that up, just turn our hook and pick it up, nice and easy. And we're going to finish out our drop down double crochet, nice loose tension. So when we finish it out, it kind of fills in that whole entire space. Now we're going to end this repeat with 4 back loop only single crochets over the next 4 stitches. So we're going to find our very next stitch, and we're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet. Here's number 2, back loop only single crochet. Number 3, and number 4. That ends our repeat for this row. So let's recap that repeat. We started our repeat over here and we did 5 back loop only single crochets, then 1 drop down double crochet, then 4 back loop only single crochet, ends the repeat. So you're just going to keep working in that exact same manner on down the rest of your row, and you'll meet back up with me when you are ready to move on to row number 5. We will do the end of row 4 together. So you guys just keep working, do your 5 back loop only single crochets next. So you just start your repeat again. So there's 1, here's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we do our 1 drop down double crochet. We found this little spot right here, working in between those posts that we created. Just drop down 2 rows below and pick up that loop. Nice loose tension, and finish out our drop down double crochet. And then we end the repeat with 4 back loop only single crochets. 1, here's 2. So that is what I mean when you just keep working in the exact same manner. It might seem a little weird to start over having really similar stitches right after the stitches you just finished, but that's how we do these. So you're going to keep working in the exact same manner. 5 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop, 4 back loop only single crochets, ends the repeat. Then you start your repeat again and do 5 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop, 4 back loop only single crochets. Then you start your repeat over again doing the 5, 1, 4. So hopefully that'll make sense, and we'll be back in just a moment to do the row end. So we are back. We're here at the end of row 4, and we have 2 stitches left, 1 and 2. Don't confuse that little knot. 1 stitch, 2 stitch. So we're going to start the repeat over again because we have 1 more stitch before our row end. We know that this last stitch is going to be that traditional single crochet. So if we're starting our repeat again, we've just done 4 back loop only single crochets to end the repeat. So our repeat begins again with another back loop only single crochet. So we're going to do that right there in the next stitch. And now last stitch in the row, traditional single crochet. And that finishes up row number 4. So you're going to clip your yarn and move on up to row number 5, switching back over to color A. We're back for row 5. We are going to join on with color A, which I have already done with my traditional single crochet in the very first stitch of the row. We are going to start off the repeat immediately, just like we've been doing. So our repeat for this row is going to be 4 drop down double crochets, 3 back loop only single crochets, then 3 drop down double crochets. So we're going to get started with the 4 drop down double crochets worked over the next 4 stitches. So always remember, we're working over our stitches. We're not doubling up or anything. So we're going to begin in the very next stitch. We're going to slide directly down, finding that little bump, the very first one you run into. And that's what we're going to pick up. And we're going to complete our first drop down double crochet. So there's number 1. Now we have to do a second drop down double crochet because we're doing a total of 4. So right here, next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, finish out our drop down double crochet. So there's number 2. And here is number 3 right here. Very next stitch. And number 4 right here, very next stitch. Now we're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets over these next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. So we're going to identify the very next stitch and do a back loop only single crochet. There's 1. Very next stitch right here. Here's number 2. And very next stitch right here, number 3. And then we are going to do 3 drop down double crochets over the next 3 stitches. So here's our very next stitch. We are sliding down 2 rows below and finding that little bump right there, picking up that front loop. So we're just going to draw up our loop, finish out our drop down double crochet. So there's 1. Wrap our yarn again. Here's our second. And last but not least, our repeat ends with our 3rd drop down double crochet. Finishing out that repeat. So let's recap. Alright, our repeat started over here with 4 drop down double crochets. Then we did 3 back loop only single crochets, followed by 3 drop down double crochets. So our repeat's going to start again. You're going to continue on down your row. You're going to do 4 drop down double crochets next. So you just will keep working right along. If you follow that repeat on down the rest of your row, you will have no problem with this pattern. You will get the exact design that the picture showed in the very beginning of the video. So we're going to just keep working in that same manner, repeat after repeat, doing it over and over until you've finished out your entire row. So you're going to pause here and you're going to meet back up with me when you are ready to complete the end of your row. So we'll be back in just a moment. We are back, and this is what your work is going to be looking like as you finish up your row. Got these little T's in between our stacks of double crochet drop downs. So we are here at the end of the row, and you are going to have 2 stitches left just like I do. So when we take a look, 1, 2 stitches left. So we have enough room to start the repeat again. So we're going to start the repeat with 1 drop down double crochet right here in this very next stitch. Nice loose tension. Now, since we are at the very last stitch in the row, we know that is a traditional single crochet each and every time. And if you take a look at the beginning of your row and your row end is matching. All of these later designs, whatever you have at the beginning of your row, is exactly what you're going to end up with at the end of your row. Take a look at that. So let's move on to our very next, which is row number 6, and I have joined on for the beginning of row 6 with a traditional single crochet right here in the very first stitch. We're working in color B this time, and we're going to do the repeat for this row very quickly together. Our repeat is going to be 4 back loop only single crochets, 3 drop down double crochets, followed by 3 back loop only single crochets to end the repeats. So we're going to start out, we're going to do our 4 back loop only single crochets over these next 4 stitches. So right here, very next stitch, we're going to do our back loop only single crochet. So there's number 1. Here's number 2. And here is number 3 back loop only single crochets, remember. And last but not least, number 4. Now we need to do 3 drop down double crochets, and if you'll take a look where you're at in your work, you're at the T that we have formed in our blue yarn in my case. So right here, drop down double crochet, my very next stitch. I'm just dropping down 2 rows below and picking up that loop. So there's 1. Here's number 2. Nice loose tension. And here is number 3, drop down double crochet. Now we need to do 3 back loop only single crochets to end our repeat. So in the very next stitch, 1 back loop only single crochet. Very next stitch, here's number 2, and last but not least, number 3. So that ends our repeat for this row. So let's recap that. You're going to start your repeat with 4 back loop only single crochets, 3 drop down double crochets, 3 back loop only single crochets. So you're going to start here, moving on down for the next repeat with the 4 back loop only single crochets. So you'll have a line of 7 when you look at your work when you're all done, but you just keep working in that repeat all the way down your row and everything will turn out just fine. So we'll be back in just a moment to finish up the end of row number 6. So you guys can pause here, meet back up with me when you are ready to do the end of row 6, and then we'll move on to row number 7. We're back and we are here at the end of row 6. So we have 2 stitches left. I have just completed my second repeat of the pattern. So I have 3 back loop only single crochets here. So I have 1 stitch to work the beginning of the repeat again. So I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet right there into the next stitch. I'm just starting that repeat again. But since I'm here at the very last stitch in the row, I know that that last stitch right there is always going to be the traditional single crochet. So that's how we end the row. So now we're going to move on to row number 7. We'll be switching back over to color A. And we're back. It is row 7 and I've already joined on with color A in the very first stitch of the row with the traditional single crochet. So that's always how we start this row, or every row. And we're going to begin doing our repeat right away for row number 7. Our repeat's going to be 3 drop down double crochets, 5 back loop only single crochets, and 2 drop down double crochets will end that repeat. So let's get started. We're going to wrap our yarn. We're going to find our very next stitch, and we're going to slide down 2 rows below and find that little bump, and we're going to finish out our first drop down double crochet. So this starts our repeat. Now we have to do a second drop down double crochet right here, very next stitch, and third drop down double crochet. Need the third one. Remember, if you're not sure where your next stitch is, always remember you can fold back. In this case we have 2 drop down double crochets, so we're expecting to see 2 stitches back here. When we put them back in place, they cover those up, so we know that our next stitch is right here. So this is my third drop down double crochet for the beginning of the repeat. So we do 3 drop down double crochets. Now we're going to do 5 back loop only single crochets over these next 5 stitches. So we're going to identify the very next stitch, and we're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet. Here's number 2. Here's number 3, back loop only. Here is number 4. And number 5. Now we're going to end our repeat with 2 drop down double crochets right here into the next 2 stitches. So we're going to identify our next stitch, slide down, pick up that bump, 2 rows below, finish out our first drop down double crochet, and then we're going to identify the next stitch and do our second drop down double crochet. So that ends our repeat. So let's recap. Our repeat begins again with the 3 drop down double crochets, 5 back loop only single crochets, and it ends with 2 drop down double crochets. So you're going to keep working in that exact same manner. You're going to start your repeat again now, and you're going to do 3 drop down double crochets. There's 1. Here is 2. And here is number 3. And then we're going to do our 5 back loop only single crochets, trying not to split your yarn. And so we've done our 3 drop down double crochets. So our repeat just started right here. So now we're going to do our 5 back loop only single crochets over the next 5 stitches. And then we will end the repeat with 2 drop down double crochets. So you guys are going to go ahead and pause here, and we'll be back in just a moment to move on to row number 8. Oh, and I'll show you the end of the row too. I will do that for you guys. I'll show you the row end in just a moment. So pause here, and we'll be back in just a moment. Make sure that you just keep doing the same repeat on down your entire row that I've given you, and it will work out perfectly. I promise. So now that I'm here at the end of the row, I might as well just do the row end. And so pause here though. If you are not at the end of your row, please pause here and keep working in the exact same manner. This is what your work's going to be looking like. And for the rest of us, we are going to take a look. We've got 2 stitches left. So our repeat would begin again here. We would start with 1 drop down double crochet right here in this very next stitch. And then we know that our last stitch in the row must be a traditional single crochet each and every time. That's how we end it. So pause, get your color A, or I'm sorry, your color B ready. Get your color A bound off, and then switch back over to color B, and we'll be ready to move on to row 8 in just a moment. And here we are. This is what your work's looking like at the end of row 7. We are moving on to color B now. We're on row number 8. We're going to be doing our traditional single crochet to join on into the very first stitch in the row. So same thing that we've been doing. Now our repeat for this row is going to be 3 back loop only single crochets, 5 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets. So we're going to start that together. We're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets over these next 3 stitches. So we're just going to insert into the very next stitch, grabbing our back loop only. There's our first back loop only single crochet. Here is number 2. And here's number 3. Now we're going to do 5 drop down double crochets. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook. Take a look what section you've made it to. We're going to find our very next stitch. We're going to slide down 2 rows below, pick up that bump, and we are going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. Nice loose tension. Grab our yarn and pull through 2. Grab our yarn and pull through 2. Now we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook. We're going to slide down 2 rows below, and we're going to do our second drop down double crochet. And now we're going to wrap again. We're going to do our third drop down double crochet. Another way when you're doing a series of drop downs is you can look at your loops. And you can see I've done 3 back loop only, or I'm sorry, 3 drop down double crochets. Now I have number 4 right here. And we've got to do a total of 5, remember, if I say the right thing. And now we have number 5 right here. And that finishes that up. Number 5 is done. Now we need to do 2 back loop only single crochets over these next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and here's 2. And that ends your repeat. So now your repeat began with the 3 back loop only single crochets. Then we did 5 drop down double crochets, and our repeat ends with the 2 back loop only single crochet. So you're going to pause here, and you're going to start over doing your 3 back loop only single crochets on down to your 5 drop down double crochets, ending your repeat with 2 back loop only single crochets. And you're going to keep working in that exact same set on down the rest of your row, and this is what your work's going to look like. So pause here, and we'll be back in just a moment. We'll finish up the end of the row together. And we're back, and we're here at the end of the row, and this is what our work is looking like. You can see what we are forming very, very clearly. So we have 2 stitches left, just like always. I've just completed a second repeat of the pattern here on my row, and I have done my 2 back loop only single crochets. So I have 2 stitches left, so I'm going to start the repeat again with 1 back loop only single crochet. And my repeat, or my row, ends with my traditional single crochet going under both loops each and every time, so I keep these nice straight edges. If you take a look, those tails weren't there. We have a really nice straight edge. So we're going to now move on to row number 9, I believe, but we'll be back in just a moment. So here we are at the beginning of row number 9. We're going to be joining on with color A. I'm going to show you guys a little refresher on where we're joining in at. So we are making sure that we're getting into our very first stitch. So we're looking for the V right here. We do not want to work into our side. We don't want to work into our turning chain. So just make sure you're going into that first stitch under the V completely. We want to get under both loops. Join on color A, and we are going to do our traditional single crochet now. So we're just going to draw up that loop, and where you can let our tail fall, or you can work with your tail. It's totally up to you. We're going to chain 1, and we are going to go back down into this exact same first stitch, and we are going to insert our hook. We're going to grab our yarn, get all of our tails out of the way, grab our yarn and pull up a loop. And we're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2 to do our traditional single crochet in the very first stitch of the row. If you take a look, you are going to have a nice straight edge by doing so. So we're going to be doing a repeat this row that is 2 drop down double crochets, 7 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet. So right here in the very next stitch, we're going to wrap our yarn, identify our next stitch, slide directly down. So we're just going straight down, and we're going to pick up that little bump, and we're going to finish our first drop down double crochet. So remember, we've got to do 2 drop down double crochets, nice loose tension, because we want that stitch to go back into place and fill in. So we want to do our second drop down double crochet right here, very next stitch. Now we're going to do 7 back loop only single crochets. So we're going to identify our very next stitch right here, and we're going to work our back loop only single crochet. There's number 1. Here is number 2. Here's number 3. Here is number 4. Here's number 5. Number 6, next stitch. And number 7. And now we're going to end our repeat with 1 drop down double crochet right here into this very next stitch. 1 drop down double crochet. So that ends our repeat. So we're going to recap real quick and then you'll continue on. Our repeat begins with 2 drop down double crochets. Then we do 7 back loop only single crochets. We end our repeat with 1 drop down double crochet. So you can pause here and you can meet back up with me when you're ready to do the end of row 9. And we're back. We're about to do the end of row 9, and I just wanted to show you what your work is going to be looking like. I have put this stitch marker to mark where my second repeat began, just as a visual to help you guys that are kind of struggling with me not being able to show multiple times of the repeat, like not being able to go over at least twice. So my repeat began with the 2 drop down double crochets, then I have 7 back loop only single crochets. My repeat ends with 1 drop down double crochet. Now I'm here at the end of my row and I have 2 stitches left. So let's take a look. 2 stitches, 1 and 2. We are going to start our repeat again. So our repeat, if we were doing our full repeat, we'd be doing 2 drop down double crochets, but we've only got 1 stitch. So we're just going to start the repeat with a drop down double crochet right here into this next stitch. And then because we're at the last stitch in the row, we do our traditional single crochet right here in this last stitch. Now we chain up 2 if you're doing my bind off, but you bind off and clip your yarn. And now we're going to move on to row number 10, but this is what your work's going to look like. Alright, so we're back for row 10. We're joining on with color B this time. So for me, that's the blue color. So we are going to be doing a repeat that consists of 2 back loop only single crochets, 7 drop down double crochets, and 1 back loop only single crochet. So let's start that. We're going to start by working 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. So we're going to go right here to our very next stitch, picking up the back loop only, and we're going to do our first back loop only single crochet. So there's 1 that begins our repeat, and now here's number 2, and now we've made it to this section right here. So we've made it right here to this section. We're going to be doing a total of 7 drop down double crochet. So we're going to identify our very next stitch. We're going to slide down 2 rows below and pick up that little bump, and we are going to finish out our drop down double crochet. Pull through 2, pull through 2. So there's 1. We need a total of 7. So here's number 2 right here. Slide down 2 rows below. First little bump we come into contact with, that's what we're picking up. So there's number 2 drop down double crochet, wrap again, and there's our first little bump. Gonna pick that up, nice loose tension for number 3. Now we need to do number 4, so right there. Oops, I keep bumping the camera. I need a little higher up, I guess. Number 4 and number 5. Drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do number 6 right here, next stitch. And last but not least, number 7, drop down double crochet right here in this very next stitch. Nice loose tension. That's what we want to make sure we're doing, loose tension. And now we're going to end this repeat with one back loop only single crochet right here in this very next stitch. So let's recap our repeat. We began our repeat with 2 back loop only single crochets right over here. Then we did 7 drop down double crochets, and our repeat ends with 1 back loop only single crochet. So you're going to keep working in the exact same manner on down the rest of your row. So you're going to start again with your 2 back loop only single crochets in your next 2 stitches. Then you're going to do 7 drop down double crochets and then 1 back loop only single crochet. So you're going to keep working in that exact same manner. So please pause here, and we will be back when you are ready to move on to row number 11. We'll do the end of row 10 together. So here we are at the end of row 10. This is what your work is looking like, and we are going to have 2 stitches left in our row, 1 and 2. And so we have just completed our repeat, and we've got a back loop only single crochet. So our repeat's going to begin again with another back loop only single crochet. So we just have room to start the repeat with 1 of its stitches, and then the last stitch in the row is our traditional single crochet. So now we just bind off, and we're going to move back over to color A for row number 11. Here we are for row number 11. I've already joined on with color A, which is the pomegranate color, the pink color for me. And we have done our traditional single crochet right there in the first stitch of the row. Our repeat for row number 11 is pretty easy to remember. We're going to be doing 1 drop down double crochet followed by 9 back loop only single crochets. So we're going to begin that right now. So we're going to do 1 drop down double crochet right here into this very next stitch. So we're just sliding down 2 rows below and picking up that bump. And we're going to finish out our drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do 9 back loop only single crochets. So very next stitch, we're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet. Here's number 2. Try not to split your yarn. 2. Here's number 3. Remember, we've got to do a total of 9. So there's number 4, back loop only single crochet. Number 5, number 6, back loop only single crochet. Number 7, number 8, and number 9 right here. Not right there, right here. Ends our repeat. So let's recap that repeat. Your repeat began over here with 1 drop down double crochet followed by 9 back loop only single crochet. So you're going to keep working in that exact same manner, repeating those same stitches all the way down the rest of your row. We'll meet back up to do the row end together, but you guys can go ahead and pause here. We'll be back in just a moment to finish up the end of row number 11. So we're at our halfway point now. Got to get to row 21. And we're back for the end of row 11. This is what your work is looking like. So when you've got half of the pattern right here. You've got a full pattern. And then here's another full. And as you can see, when you place that next drop down double crochet, it landed dead center. Finish out the peak of that diamond shape. So we're here at the end of the row, 2 stitches left. I've just completed the end of my repeat, so I just finished up 9 back loop only single crochets. Got 2 stitches left from start that repeat again with 1 drop down double crochet right here for this very next stitch. Ta-da! And finish out our drop down double crochet. And then we know, because we have this last stitch left, we are doing our traditional single crochet right there in the last stitch of the row. And then you can just go ahead and bind off. And we are going to move on for row number 12. We're going to be switching back over to color B. And we're back for row 12. We have joined on with color B. So that's the blue color for me with a traditional single crochet in the very first stitch in the row. The repeat for row 12 is going to be 1 back loop only single crochet followed by 9 drop down double crochet. So we're going to get started. Our repeat begins now with 1 back loop only single crochet right here into the very next stitch. Now we're going to begin doing 9 drop down double crochet. So right here at this section we are going to find our very next stitch, slide down 2 rows below and pick up that little bump. Hopefully you guys are getting the drift of it now of what you're doing when you're doing these drop downs. So we have 1 drop down, got to do a total of 9. So here's our next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, picking up that little bump, and just pull up that loop and finish out your second drop down double crochet. Here is our third stitch right here, slide down 2 rows below, picking up that little bump, finishing out our third drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do our fourth drop down double crochet, number 5 drop down double crochet, number 6 right here, very next stitch, number 7, number 8 right here, very next stitch. Oops, I apologize, I have a new camera set up, still getting used to it. Number 9, our last one, 9 drop down double crochets. This 9th drop down double crochet ends our repeat. So let's recap that. Our repeat began over here with 1 back loop only single crochet, and then we do 9 drop down double crochet. So you're going to keep working in exact same manner. So you're going to pause here and you are going to meet back up with me when you're ready to do the end of row 12 and move on to row number 13. Here's what our work is looking like at the end of row 12. We are going to finish that up. So we're going to start our repeat again with 1 back loop only single crochet. Now we're at our row end, so we're going to do traditional single crochet in the last stitch. So we are back for row 13. I've joined on with color A here in the very first stitch, doing my traditional single crochet. We have a very easy repeat for this row. We're going to be doing 1 drop down double crochet followed by 9 back loop only single crochet. So let's begin that repeat. We're going to wrap our yarn around our hook and we are going to identify our very next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, doing our drop down double crochet. So we're just going to pick up that little bump and we are going to pull up a loop, nice loose tension, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. Now we just need to do 9 back loop only single crochets over these next 9 stitches. So now we're going to identify the very next stitch and we are going to do our back loop only single crochet. There's number 1. Remember, we've got to do 9. So here's number 2. Sorry about my tail. Here's number 3. Oops. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7, back loop only single crochet. Number 8. And last but not least, number 9. ends our repeat. So we're going to keep working the repeat all the way down the rest of your row. You're going to do your drop down double crochet followed by 9 back loop only single crochets all the way down the rest of your row. So you're just going to keep starting that repeat over and over until you've reached the end of your row, and then you'll meet back up with me to finish out row 13 end, and then we'll be moving right on along to row 14. So please pause here and I'll be back with you in just a moment. And here we are at the end of row 13. This is what your work is looking like. So you can see you're forming your shapes really nicely now. And we're going to start our repeat again. We have 2 stitches left in the row. So we're going to start our repeat. So I've just done 9 back loop only single crochets. So that ended my repeat. So my repeat begins again right here. Very next stitch with 1 drop down double crochet. Slide down 2 rows below, grab up that bump, and finish out our drop down double crochet. Last stitch in the row is always a traditional single crochet going under both of the loops. So we're going completely under that stitch. And we are finished on row 13. So we'll be back in just a second to move on to row 14. We'll be switching back over to color B. And we're starting row 14 now. We are joining on with color B. So you're doing your traditional single crochet in that very first stitch in the row. And now the repeat for row 14 will begin immediately. We're going to be doing 2 back loop only single crochets, followed by 7 drop down double crochets, and 1 back loop only single crochet. So let's start that. Our repeat's going to start with our 2 back loop only single crochets. There's 1, and here is number 2. Now we're going to do 7 drop down double crochets, so right here at this section. So we're going to find our next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, picking up our little bump, and we're just going to finish out our drop down double crochet. Nice loose tension. There's number 1. Here's number 2. You can just kind of look at these little bumps or little front loops that we're picking up down here 2 rows below to kind of keep yourself straight on your count and to keep your stitches going. You can look for your next little bump. And that's our 3rd drop down double crochet. As long as you've got that position of the first one correct, you can follow along looking at the bumps instead of really paying attention to these stitches when you're doing a sequence of these, you know, one after another. Just a little trick. Some of you have probably already figured that out, but there's number 4. We've got to do a total of 7. So here's number 5. Number 6, and number 7 right here, very next stitch. And now our repeat is going to end after we finish the 7th drop down double crochet with 1 back loop only single crochet, the very next stitch. That ends our repeat. So let's recap that. Our repeat's going to begin again with 2 back loop only single crochets, 7 drop down double crochets, and it ends with 1 back loop only single crochet. So please pause here and meet back up with me when you are ready to move on to your next row. We will do the row end together again, just as we have been doing, but I'll be back in just a moment. So pause and we'll see you in a second. We're back here at the end of row 14. I have just finished my 2nd repeat of the pattern with the 1 back loop only single crochet. So now we have 2 stitches left. We're going to start our repeat again with a back loop only single crochet. And then because we are at the end of the row, we know we need to do a traditional single crochet going under both loops. Making sure we're getting under both loops. We're going to finish out our traditional single crochet in the last stitch in the row, and then we bind off. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to row number 15. We're going to be switching back over to color A, but this is what your work is looking like. Hopefully you are liking how it's looking. We're starting to form the top part of our diamond. So we'll be back in just a moment for row 15. And we have joined on here for row 15 with our color A. So for me, that's this pink color called pomegranate. And we are going to move on this row very quickly. We have another easy repeat. We're going to be doing 2 drop down double crochets in the next 2 stitches, followed by 7 back loop only single crochets. And our repeat's going to end with 1 drop down double crochet. So let's get started on that. We're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, and we are going to identify our very next stitch, and we are going to slide down 2 rows below and pick up that bump. Finish out our first drop down double crochet right there. Now we need to do a second drop down double crochet, so we're going to identify the very next stitch, slide down and find that little bump, pick that up, and finish our second drop down double crochet. Now we need to do a total of 7 back loop only single crochets over these next 7 stitches. So we're going to identify the very next stitch, pick up that back loop only, and do our first back loop only single crochet. Here is number 2, number 3, number 4. Just grabbing up that back loop only for these. Here's number 5, number 6, and number 7. And now our repeat ends with 1 drop down double crochet right here in the very next stitch. That ends our repeat for row 15. So let's recap that. Our repeat begins again with 2 drop down double crochets, then we do 7 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet. So you can go ahead and pause here. We'll be back in just a moment, and we will finish up row 15 end together. We'll do those last 2 stitches together, and then we'll be moving right on along to row 16. So I'll be back in just a moment. You guys keep working. I just did my 2 drop down double crochets to begin the repeat. Now I'm moving on to my 7 back loop only single crochets, and you'll be doing exactly the same. So I'll be back in just a moment to finish up the end of row 15. We are back, and this is what our work is looking like, and we are here at the end of the row. I have just finished out my repeat, and my repeat ended with the 1 drop down double crochet. I have 2 stitches left, 1 and 2. Ignore that little knot, and we're going to start our repeat again. We're going to do 1 drop down double crochet right here into the very next stitch. So we're just going to finish out a drop down double crochet, and then we're going to do 1 back loop, or I'm sorry, then we're going to do our traditional single crochet in the very next stitch. Sorry about that. Always traditional single crochet, the last stitch of the row, and then we bind off. We're going to move on up for row 16, and we're beginning out on row 16 now. I have inserted my hook under the very first stitch under both loops. Hopefully my camera will focus for you guys. We're going to be adding on color B for row 16. So for me, that's the blue color. So we're just going to add that onto our hook, and then we're going to draw up our loop. You can let your tail fall, or you can work around it, but we're going to chain 1. And I'm getting a little loose, so I'm going to have to pull on that tail. Oops. Chain 1. And then you're going to go back down in that same exact first stitch, and you're going to finish out your traditional single crochet by grabbing and pulling up a loop. And then we're going to grab and pull through 2 to finish that traditional single crochet. Now our repeat for row 16 is going to be 3 back loop only single crochets, followed by 5 drop down double crochets, and it will end with 2 back loop only single crochets. So let's start that repeat. We're right here into the very next stitch. We're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets over the next 3 stitches. So there's number 1. Here's number 2. And here is number 3. And now we're going to do we're actually going to do 5 drop down double crochets. In the very next stitch, we're going to start with our first drop down double crochet. There's number 1. Now we have to do number 2. So we're just dropping down, finding those little bumps. Here is number 3. Next stitch, slide down, find that little bump. Now we're going to do number 4. I'm going to pull out some more yarn. Sorry about that. And number 5, right here. Very next stitch. And I have slipped my yarn. And that's our 5th drop down double crochet. And now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets over these next 2 stitches to end our repeat. So in the very next stitch, we're going to do a back loop only single crochet. And in the very next stitch, we're going to do a back loop only single crochet. That ends our repeat. So we're going to recap what we have done. Our repeat began over here with 3 back loop only single crochets right here. Then we did 5 drop down double crochets, and our repeat ends with the 2 back loop only single crochets. So you're going to pause here and you're going to start your repeat again, doing your 3 back loop only single crochets, 5 drop down double crochets, and 2 back loop only single crochets all the way to the end of your row, and we'll meet back up to do the row end together just as we have been. So meet you guys back in just a moment. We're back. We're ready to do the end of row 16. So this is what our work is looking like, and we have 2 stitches left just like we have been. I've just completed the end of the repeat, so I've got the 2 back loop only single crochets. We're going to start that repeat again, and we're going to start the repeat with a back loop only single crochet just like we would do if we had more. And now the last stitch in the row is going to be a traditional single crochet going under both loops, and that is all we need to do. And then we bind off. We're going to move on up for row 17. And here we are, ready to move on to row 17. I have joined on with color A this time, traditional single crochet in the very first stitch. We're going to get started. Our repeat for this row is going to be 3 drop down double crochets, 5 back loop only single crochets, and 2 drop down double crochets will end our repeat. So let's get started. We're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, and we're going to identify our very next stitch. We're going to slide down 2 rows below, pick up that little bump, and we are going to finish out our drop down double crochet. So we have to do a total of 3 of these. So there's number 1. So now we're going to identify the next stitch, slide down 2 rows below. Here is number 2. And next stitch, number 3, we're going to do our drop down double crochet. Now we need to move on by doing 5 back loop only single crochets over these next 5 stitches. So we're going to identify our very next stitch, pull up that loop, and finish out our back loop only single crochet. We're going to go into the very next stitch and do a back loop only single crochet. Here's number 3, back loop only single crochet, number 4, and number 5, Now we're going to end our repeat for this row with 2 drop down double crochets over these next 2 stitches. So in the very next stitch, we're going to do our drop down double crochet. Try not to bump your camera if you're me. And here's our second drop down double crochet. Nice loose tension. That's what I'm struggling with. So let's recap that repeat, because those 2 drop down double crochets ends our repeat for this row. So we started over here with our 3 drop down double crochets, then we did 5 back loop only single crochets, followed by 2 drop down double crochets. So now our repeat's going to begin again with 3 drop down double crochets. So we just keep working in exact same manner all the way down the rest of our row. And then we will meet back up to do the row end in just a moment together, and then we'll be moving right on along to row number 18. So I've just finished my 3rd drop down double crochet, and now I'm going to do my 5 back loop only single crochets over these next 5 stitches, and then my repeat will end with 2 drop down double crochets. And then I'll be at my row end, but you guys won't. So pause here, please, and meet back up with me when you're ready to finish up the end of your row. And here we are at the end of row 17. This is what your work is looking like. And I've just finished my repeat, or I'm about to finish my repeat here on camera with you. I have got to do my 2nd drop down double crochet. So I'm going to identify the very next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, and that ends that repeat. So that's my 2nd repeat for me. Started over here, ends over here. So now we have 2 stitches left, so we're going to go ahead and start our repeat again. And our repeat begins with 1 drop down double crochet, or it begins with a drop down double crochet. So we're just going to slide down 2 rows below, and we're going to finish out a drop down double crochet. Now we have 1 stitch left, so we are going to finish that up with a traditional single crochet, and then we chain up and bind off. We're back. We're starting on row 18 now. This is what your work is looking like, and we have joined on in the 1st stitch in the row with a traditional single crochet. So row 18 is done in color B, so for me that's the blue color. So switch back over to color B, join on with your traditional single crochet in the very 1st stitch of the row. Now a repeat for this row is pretty simple. It's going to be 4 back loop only single crochets, 3 drop down double crochets, 3 back loop only single crochets. So we're going to get started with that. We're going to start right here in the very next stitch. We are going to begin with our 1st back loop only single crochet. So there's 1. I've got to do a total of 4. So there's 1. Here's number 2. And I just split my yarn. So there's number 2. And here's number 3. It's really odd doing this, like looking at a camera, looking at a screen and working, so that's why I keep splitting my yarn. So I've got 4 back loop only single crochets, and now I'm going to begin with my 3 drop down double crochets. I'm just sliding down 2 rows below, picking up that loop. So there's my 1st drop down double crochet. Here's my next stitch. I'm going to do my 2nd drop down double crochet, and here is my 3rd drop down double crochet. And now we're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets over the next 3 stitches. So we're going to identify our very next stitch, and we're going to do a back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch, Same thing, back loop only single crochet, and our repeat ends with the third back loop only single crochet. So let's recap that. Our repeat began over here with 4 back loop only single crochets. Then we did 3 drop down double crochets, and we end our repeat with 3 back loop only single crochets. So you can go ahead and pause here, and we will keep working in the exact same manner, starting over with our 4 back loop only single crochets over the next 4 stitches. Then we will do our 3 drop down double crochets, and then we will end with 3 back loop only single crochets to end our repeat again. So you'll just keep working that exact same manner. So pause, and we will be back in just a moment to move on to the end of row 18, and then we'll be moving right along to row 19. We've only got row 21 as our last row, so we are almost there. And I'm just finishing up what I'm doing real quick. Now I need 3 back loop only single crochets to finish out my repeat, and I will be there at the end of the row. 1, 2, and 3. And I'm fighting with my yarn a little bit, so try not to do that, because see, I'm stretching these stitches. We don't want to do that. And here we are at the end of row 18, so I'm going to start the repeat again. I've got 2 stitches left, so my repeat begins again with 1 back loop only single crochet, and then I know I'm at the last stitch, so that's going to be a traditional single crochet where we go under both loops, and then we will bind off. So we'll be back in just a second to move up to row 19. We're back for row 19. This is what your work is looking like. So hopefully you're liking what you see. And we are going to move on for row 19 by joining on with color A. So for me, that's the pomegranate color. So joined on, color A, traditional single crochet, and then our repeat for row 19 is going to be 4 drop down double crochets, followed by 3 back loop only single crochets, and 3 drop down double crochets. So we're going to get started on that. We're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, and we're going to identify our very next stitch, and we're going to slide down 2 rows below, and we are going to pick up that little bump, and we're going to finish out our drop down double crochet. We need to do a total of 4 of these. So there's number 1. Here is number 2. Nice loose tension. Number 3. And number 4. Now we're going to move on with 3 back loop only single crochets over these next 3 stitches. So we're just going to find the very next stitch, back loop only single crochet, there's 1, here's number 2, and here is number 3. Now we're going to end this repeat with 3 drop down double crochets over the next 3 stitches. There's the very next stitch. So there's 1. Here's number 2. And here is number 3 right here. And that ends our repeat for this row. So our repeat began over here with the 4 drop down double crochets right here. And we did 3 back loop only single crochets, followed by 3 drop down double crochets. So you're just going to start again with your 4 drop down double crochets and keep moving on down your row. So you can pause here and you can meet back up with me when you're ready to move on to finishing out the end of row 19 and moving on up to row number 20. And we are here at the end of row 19. I've just finished the repeat, my second repeat. So I've got the 3 drop down double crochets right there. Now I've got 2 stitches left in my row, so I'm going to go ahead and start the repeat again. And I'm going to be able to do 1 drop down double crochet right here into the very next stitch. So I'm going to complete that. And then in the very last stitch of the row, as always, traditional single crochet going under both loops. And then we can bind off. I like to chain 2 to bind off. You bind off however you prefer. Clip your yarn, and then I'm going to cinch this on down. We're going to move on up to row 20. This is what your work is looking like after finishing row 19. So we're switching back over next to color B. Here is what our work's looking like. We are joining on with color B for row 20. So we've joined on with our traditional single crochet right there in the very first stitch. Now our repeat's going to begin with 5 back loop only single crochets. We're going to do 1 drop down double crochet and 4 back loop only single crochets. So our repeat is not too terribly hard. We're going to start here with the very next stitch and begin doing our 5 back loop only single crochets over the next 5 stitches. So there's number 1. Here is number 2. Here's number 3. Here's number 4. And number 5. Now we do 1 drop down double crochet. So if you take a look right here in the center, so we're going to drop down 2 rows below, picking up that little bump. Finish out our drop down double crochet. And now we're going to do 4 back loop only single crochets over the next 4 stitches to finish out this repeat. So there's number 1. Here's number 2. Number 3. And number 4. And that ends our repeat. So we're going to recap that. Our repeat began over here with 5 back loop only single crochets. Then we did 1 drop down double crochet and 4 back loop only single crochets. So you're going to pause here, keep working in that exact same manner on down the rest of your row. And then we will meet back up to do the row end, and then we will be on to row 21, which is our last row. So finish up row 20 here in color B and meet back up with me the end of your row or when you're ready to move on to the final row. And we are here at the end of row 20. This is what your work's looking like. We're going to finish up these last 2 stitches together. So we're going to start our repeat again with a back loop only single crochet. And then the last stitch in the row is always a traditional single crochet, making sure that we're going under both loops. And that finishes us out for row 20. So now we are on to row 21, very last row we're doing together. We're joining on for row 21 now, and I am going to show you guys the join one last time, how we join on and start the row. We've made sure to go under the very first V. I've got my color A already on my hook with a slip knot, so I'm just going to draw up color A, and then we can let that tail fall. Now we chain 1, and we go back down into the same exact stitch. So we're going into the first stitch again, and we're going to finish out our traditional single crochet. And now our repeat for row 21 begins. So we're going to be doing 5 drop down double crochets, 1 back loop only single crochet, 4 drop down double crochets. So let's start that. So we're going to begin with our 5 drop down double crochets over the next 5 stitches. So we're going to identify our very next stitch, slide down 2 rows below and pick up that bump, and we're going to finish out our drop down double crochet. So there's 1, got to do a total of 5. So here's number 2, sliding down, picking up that bump, Here's number 3 right there. Finishing out our third drop down double crochet. So here's number 4. Slide down, find that little bump, and finish up our 4th drop down double crochet. Now right here, very next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, and we are going to finish out our 5th drop down double crochet. Now we need to do 1 back loop only single crochet right here into this very next stitch. So 1 back loop, and now we're going to end the repeat with 4 drop down double crochets worked over these next 4 stitches. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, slide down 2 rows below, picking up that bump, finish out drop down double crochet. Here's number 2. Got to do a total of 4. So there's number 2. Here's number 4. Or I'm sorry, number 3. Oh, it's been a long filming session, I assure you. So there's 3, and here is number 4. And that ends our repeat. So our repeat began over here with the 5 drop down double crochets. Then we did 1 back loop only single crochet, and then 4 drop down double crochets. And since I messed that one all up and it's the last row anyway, we're going to go ahead and finish this out together. So I'm going to do this repeat with you one more time. So we're going to start with our 5 drop down double crochets. Go right here, very next stitch, and start with our first drop down double crochet. Here's number 1. Here's number 2. Repeat starting over. Here's number 3 right here, very next stitch. Now I'm going to pull out a little more yarn. Now we're going to do number 4 right here, very next stitch. And number 5, drop down double crochet right there in the very next stitch. Now we need to do 1 back loop only single crochet into the very next stitch, and then 4 drop down double crochets over the next 4 stitches to end that repeat. So there's 1. Here's number 2. Here's number 3. And here is number 4. So you guys can pause here, and you will meet back up with me when you're ready to do the end of row 21. Remember, your repeat starts with 5 drop down double crochets. So you'll be starting that again. 1 back loop only single crochet, then 4 drop down double crochets, and you keep repeating that same set of stitches all the way down your row, and it's going to end up looking just like this. So we'll be back in just a moment to do the end of row 21. And we're here at the end of row 21. So we would be starting over with 1 stitch of our repeat because we have 2 stitches left. So if we're starting this over, we'd be doing our repeat begins with drop down double crochets. So we have room to do 1 drop down double crochet right here into this very next stitch. So we're just going to slide down 2 rows below and pick that up. And then the very last stitch in the row is a traditional single crochet. Just like so. And that ends row 21, and that is the complete pattern. So for those of you who want to do this for an entire project or for a larger section, within a project that you're working on, you are going to be rewinding back to row 2. And the row start times are all down below in the description. So every single row is listed from row 2 on. I've even got row 1, but all of that is listed down in the description right up there at the top. So you will just click on that timestamp. It'll take you right there to the spot in the video that you need to start row 2 again. You'll work row 2 through row 21 over and over and over to create a wider section like the pictures that I showed at the beginning of the video. And I'll throw in a couple back here as well. But you want to keep working those same set of rows 2 through 21 to make a larger piece. So to continue another repeat of this pattern on up. And obviously when you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to finish out right here is going to be up here, and you'll be finishing out this diamond. So your diamonds will be offset this time, and it'll be color A that you'll basically have full diamonds on, and then you'll have color B coming in as well. So that will make more sense when you actually work it, but you'll see you're going to be alternating the colors of the diamonds as you move up. You'll be doing another set of row of the color B. You'll have another set directly above, but in between them will be full sets of this color A diamond. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. If you are wanting a different look, you can always work it by the length, the total length of your project instead of the width that we typically, when we're starting out a blanket, will chain as wide as we want it, and then we'll work up to make it as tall of a blanket as we want. By just simply working your total length first, you would change the look of any mosaic that you're using. So you would chain up the total length that you want, and then you're going to make your blanket as wide as you want from here, working out this way. So you would work it and work all your rows exactly the same. It's just when the blankets actually turn correctly to look like a blanket, you know, tall wise, your diamonds would be turned, giving a wide look to them instead of a tall look to them. So they look only this tall, but they look wider. So that's another way that you can change up a mosaic just by how you decide to work the project. So hopefully that is making sense. Hopefully you've enjoyed this tutorial. I appreciate you guys as always for watching. Please make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Please leave me a comment down below, and please make sure you're subscribed if you're interested in the chart for this design, including the bonus chart, which I'll pop a picture on screen for you of the bonus chart that is included when you purchase on my Etsy store. That's another variation of this exact design. I really like that one. It's just too long of a video for me to be able to record at this point with the equipment that I have. So appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much as always. Until next time, bye for now.